In the mid-1970s, a predator stalked San Francisco using a highly unusual method of entrapment. Instead of relying on brute force or sudden violence to overwhelm his targets, he hunted with a sketch pad. He spent his nights in the dimly lit lounges, late-night diners, and gay bars of the city's Castro and Tenderloin districts. He would locate a target, sit across from them, and begin to draw. The resulting portraits were highly detailed and accurate. By handing over a beautiful, custom drawing, the killer created an instant, flattering icebreaker. It was an incredibly effective psychological tactic that immediately lowered the victim's guard. Looking at this aerial view, you can clearly see the dense city grid suddenly give way to the isolated, heavy tree lines of Golden Gate Park and the long stretch of Ocean Beach. Once trust was established in the crowded bars, the killer would convince his targets to leave with him to these remote areas, where he would violently stab them to death. By exploiting the entirely normal human desire for attention and validation, the man who became known as the Doodler successfully lured and murdered at least 5 people. The investigation into the Doodler didn't collapse from a lack of evidence. In fact, the police held the specific materials that usually lead straight to a conviction. The police actually had an extraordinary advantage. 3 men faced the killer, survived the attacks, and came forward. These survivors, who included a well-known entertainer and a diplomat, were able to give investigators a clear account of what happened. Because the killer sat across from his targets in brightly lit diners and bars for extended periods, the survivors provided incredibly detailed physical descriptions. This allowed forensic artists to generate a highly accurate composite sketch of the attacker's face. Armed with this face, San Francisco police found their man. They detained a primary suspect who matched the survivor's descriptions perfectly. When they searched him, he was even carrying a sketch pad. So we have surviving eyewitnesses, a precise physical description, and the perfect suspect sitting in police custody. Why did a prolific serial killer walk out the front door of the precinct completely free? The answer lies in the severe social climate of the mid-1970s. At the time, the gay community faced intense systemic prejudice, and homosexuality was heavily stigmatized across almost all aspects of American public life. Securing a conviction required formal testimony in open court. A matching sketch and suspect in custody were insufficient. Taking the stand meant entering their personal lives into the public record, legally requiring them to expose their sexual orientation to the press and public. In that era, being outed carried severe, immediate consequences. For a prominent diplomat and a well-known entertainer, it guaranteed the loss of careers, the alienation of their families, and a massive threat to safety. The survivors were cornered. They had to weigh the danger of letting a serial murderer go against a society that was perfectly willing to dismantle their entire lives if they sought justice. Acting out of pure self-preservation, the 3 survivors made their choice. They flatly refused to testify in court, declining to publicly identify the suspect. This wall of silence instantly crippled the prosecution's case. Without their formal, on-the-record cooperation, the district attorney simply did not have the hard physical evidence required to bring charges. The police had no choice. They released the primary suspect onto the streets, and the investigation ground to a complete halt, remaining frozen for decades. The Doodler was no criminal mastermind. He relied on a legal framework that inadvertently shielded him because it depended on a society too prejudiced to protect the very people it was supposed to serve. Systemic bigotry creates active blind spots within law enforcement. Predators look for those exact vulnerabilities, knowing their victims are too socially compromised to fight back. But the cultural landscape of San Francisco and the nation has shifted dramatically over the last 50 years. The immense social pressure that forced those survivors into silence has largely been dismantled. Looking at this digital representation of sequenced DNA, we see exactly how police are bypassing the need for a witness. Investigators have submitted cold case evidence for advanced DNA profiling, hoping to extract a genetic match that doesn't require a survivor's testimony. Coupled with a substantial new financial reward, this cutting-edge science is systematically stripping away the anonymity the killer relied on for half a century. The man who weaponized art to bait his victims may soon lose his hiding place. finally brought down by the very societal progress he once used to his advantage.